That's the leader. King of Light spots the run. Here comes King of Light. King of Light gathering. He's a phoenix. He's a phoenix. King of Light. King of Light puts him away. 5 in a line. King of Light with a brilliant win in the Guineas. He's a breathtaking 3-year-old and remains undefeated.
1800 in a couple of weeks' time in a Group 1 Northerly. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's been in the back of my mind for a long time. So obviously everything's got to go great. You've got to get win a race to get yourself into the race. But I think he'd be right amongst it.
Down inside the 200, Watch Me Rock, the leader from Comfort Me. In behind them, Western Empire. Watch Me Rock, though, being willed. The stablemate gets up on the inside, but Pike wins another railway. There's a sense of knowing when the Wizard has his eye in. He takes the Guineas, the Railway Double.
2 weeks' time, Northerly Stakes. Watch Me Rock goes there, the winner of the Railway Stakes. King of Light goes there, the winner of the WA Guineas. It's the same decision that Stevie Parnham had to make a couple of years ago.
That's right, it's not easy at all. I just love the way Watch Me Rock just put himself in the race. Just always travelled like a winner. But then you look at the 3-year-olds, they've got an enormous record in the Northerly, so a few sleepless nights. I don't know. We'll worry about that when the time comes.
It's getting late, but I don't mind. We'll take this in until...
Reflecting on day 2 of the Perth Racing Carnival, and as you saw there, William Pike was on fire, and as you heard through his interview, a difficult decision to come as to who he rides between those 2 exciting horses. To talk us through those decisions and what's coming up this weekend, we welcome in Brittany Taylor to trackside this afternoon. And Brittany, very good morning to you.
Hey, yes, it's good morning here in Perth with the time difference. Great to be with you, Em.
Now, we just heard in that interview with William Pike from last Saturday his difficult decision between those 2 horses. Do you have any info in perhaps who he might have picked, the older horse or the up-and-coming star?
He has gone the 3-year-old up-and-comer King of Light. He was talking about it being a flip-of-the-coin decision, really wrestling with it. And I think it would have been particularly hard given that the older horse is trained by Grant and Alana Williams, who he has such a good association with. That was their 6th, both of them combining for their 6th Railway Stakes on the weekend. So it would have been really hard to say, hey, Grant and Alana, sorry, I'm jumping ship here and I have to stick with the 3-year-old. But 3-year-olds in a Northerly with just 52 kilos is really, really hard to go past. As you said, they've got a great record in the race. And typically, if a jockey can get down to that weight, like Stevie Parnham a couple of years ago, usually they go that way. They go the lighter weight. And King of Light is just so exciting. So he's had to make a few big decisions, Pikey, this carnival. He had to pick between Watch Me Rock and Western Empire in the Railway, and he pulled the right rein there. So he is hoping that he can continue to make the right decision.
Been a mover in the market here as well. We're just looking at it. 11s into 3s for King of Light there. That's Saturday the 6th of December. If we look now towards the Winterbottom, obviously there's some pretty nice horses heading there. Wanted to start with Joker's Grin. 2 runs since that Quokka and has won both of them, Brittany. Looks like it's shaping up really well to be at a peak.
Oh, he is so exciting. He's probably the best horse we have in WA, and the numbers that he's producing say that he could be competitive in an Everest next year. The phone rang this year and he was offered a spot in the Everest and they decided to stay home. So that's the kind of quality that he is, and he's still maturing, and I think the horse that we saw in the Quokka, I think he's come on even furnished more, 6 months on into a spring-summer carnival. So he's really exciting. Paddy Carberry has had such a wonderful association with him and trainer Bernie Miller, they're best mates, and no other jockey had ever sat on Joker's Grin. He just never gives the keys away until last start. Paddy had a concussion just days before this lead-up run, and this got stood down for 12 days with the mandatory concussion protocols, and so he had to hand the keys over to his good mate Sean O'Donnell, and he was able to get the job done, to be honest, and no disrespect to Sean, I think anyone could have ridden Joker's Grin because he's just that good, and just the way that he has just been progressing, I think sets up for a really exciting contest on Saturday.
But I remember that Quokka and the sort of story, the backstory behind Joker's Grin. He was the underdog coming into the race. We're just looking at the Quokka now, and it was a real sort of arrival on the scene, wasn't it, in terms of this win?
It was, and that was him taking on Overpass. So in terms of their ledger. Joker's Grin is one up. With that being said, I'm not sure we saw the best of Overpass in that quokka. He went into that with, I think it was 3 weeks between runs, which isn't typically what Bjorn does with him. Usually he comes to Perth fresh, and we know he's such a good fresh horse. So maybe Joker's had the advantage that day because Overpass wasn't at his best, whereas this weekend I think it's going to be entirely different because Overpass has that formula back in his favour. He's going to come fresh. With that being said, Jokers has drawn nicely in 6 to not get ridiculously far back off him. So in terms of how this race is going to finish off, I think it's going to be so exciting, and I'd be very surprised if they're not the top 2.
We're now looking, you mentioned Overpass in the Everest, and Britt, I just get the impression that Overpass is racing as well as ever, if not at his absolute best. That certainly makes him a force to be reckoned with.
When you're finishing a length and a half off Kaying Rising, and then you have a look at what Kaying Rising did on the weekend back in Hong Kong, God, it's good form, isn't it? He ran out of his skin this day. I think everybody was so proud of what he was able to achieve. He looked like he was going to give a little bit of cheek there for a second when he's out in front, and he's just so tough and really hard to get past. He really put the ears back and didn't want to lie down. You know, sometimes you talk about runs like that taking a bit out of them, but I think he's had enough time between then and now to be really nice and fresh. And look at that form. Kaying Rising, Jimmy Star, a subsequent Group 1 winner. It's the best possible form for sprinters in Australia, and that's the kind of form he brings to a Winterbottom.
Luana Miss has to be the horse that, I guess, for people outside of the Perth racing jurisdiction, we just don't know a whole lot about. Tell us about Luana Miss. Won its past 2 outings, that most recent one at listed level. Can it be a threat in the Winterbottom?
I think if she'd drawn a little bit better, she could be. She's the X factor. She's a 3-year-old filly with the light weight. She's not overly big, and she isn't like a real robust. When we talk about, 3-year-old fillies going to an Everest, for example, yeah, they can measure up. But her biggest asset is her point-to-point speed. What she was able to do last start, you thought, oh, well, she can't win from here. She's just buried away. But she's explosive. When she sees daylight, her point-to-point speed is absolutely rapid. She drew barrier 11 of 11 yesterday, however. So I just don't know what Sean does. I think he has to just flop out the back and either ride her for luck and hope those breaks come on the fence and she can show that point-to-point speed, or does she get her back into the race? We haven't really seen her necessarily make a long sustained run, and when you're taking on seasoned sprinters as a light 3-year-old filly, that can be hard. But she's undeniably very talented, and I just would have loved to have seen her draw a gate to be tucked away and just saved up for one little burst of speed at the end.
Britt, you've made a case for a number of chances in the Winterbottom. I'm going to put you on the spot, and you've got to give us a number. The winner, who do you think is going to take out the race?
I quite literally had tossed and turned all day yesterday. I changed my mind 7 times, but I've ended up deciding, and it's the weather that has been the factor for me, of all things, because I don't think there's going to be a lot between them ability-wise with Joker's Grin and Overpass. But I've settled with Overpass because of the track conditions and the weather. Now, it's a 30-degree day on Saturday, which, usually lends itself to a drying, faster surface. And the wind direction at Ascot, when you're playing with an easterly, it really favours front runners. Now, we've got a southerly to southeasterly. So as long as there's that bit of that easterly direction, I just think it may, if I was looking for something to split them, I'm just thinking Overpass is making his own luck out in front. There's not a lot of other pace in the race. So he's just going to be able to cruise at the speed that Josh Parr wants him to. And if that track is playing a little bit more leaderish, he's going to skip off the bend and really make it hard for Joker's Grin to run him down. With that being said, I think Joker's will be inching closer in the finish. I think he'll dive at him, but I can just imagine Darren saying Overpass holds on and makes it 3 Winterbottoms in a row.
Well, I'm sure Bjorn Baker will be hoping that as well, and no doubt we'll get a big celebration if Overpass does win. Undercard also has some nice races on it. Brett, have you got a horse to follow or horses to follow throughout that card?
We're still waiting on final acceptances for the rest of the meeting, but I think I love the Country Championship final on this day. It gives a lovely flavour where all of the there's so many different racetracks across Western Australia out in the country that they all converge here on a big Group 1 day, and it's so hard to find the winner because you're looking at so many different form lines from Albany to Kalgoorlie to all of these different places, but it's always a race that I think is worth watching.
We love having you here in New Zealand on the show, Britt. Thank you so much for joining us. Great insight into that Perth Racing Carnival. Enjoy the good racing coming out of Perth in the coming weeks.
Thanks so much. Can't wait.